everyone, Alexa Dunn here, and today I want to warn you of a huge mistake that I see writers do specifically related to self-publishing. I would say the biggest mistake you can make self-publishing if your end game is traditional publishing. And so this is both something I've seen happen over and over again, and it's always really frustrating, and also a question that comes up super often. I've seen it less so on YouTube, but a ton on Reddit. It's come up with my mentorship program. And what I want to warn you about is that you should never, ever self-publish anything that you want to get traditionally published. If your end goal for a work is traditional publishing, don't self-publish it. What I hear a lot is that people think, oh, I'll do a test run of this in self-publishing, I'll throw it up on Amazon, I'll see how it does, almost like workshopping, or doing it on the off chance that it blows up really big to parlay that into a traditional deal. And we are going to talk about unicorns, but generally speaking, the second you self-publish a work, you have thrown away your opportunity to be traditionally published. Because when you self-publish a book, you get an ISBN for that book. It is officially published. And what traditional publishers are interested in is what's called first rights of publication. This came up in my Wattpad video. And they want to be the first one with the right to publish something, because that is the publisher's opportunity to build a brand around the author, build buzz around a book as a debut, etc. And when you take that away, well, then they're no longer interested. Plus, all of a sudden you have a sales history, and nothing counts against you more than poor sales, because you are basically saying to a publisher, no one really wants this. Now, of course, as you know, self-publishing is hard. It's not as easy as people think that it is. Doing it well and successfully is difficult. You have to wear a lot of hats when you self-publish, and that's why those who self-publish well are pretty dang amazing, because they're really good at a lot of different things, in particular marketing. You have to market your own work. So if your skills don't lie in marketing and packaging your book well, of course it's not going to sell well in self-publishing, and you've thrown that book away as far as traditional publishing is concerned. But you will all say, what about Wool, or 50 Shades of Grey, or The Martian? Oh, Amanda Hawking, that's another one, old school. Welcome to the wonderful world of exceptions, of unicorns. There are definitely some pretty amazing success stories of people who self-published a book. It did really well in self-publishing, and then they got a traditional deal, movies in a lot of cases, and those stories are pretty cool. But those stories are also outliers, just like bestsellers who make millions of dollars in traditional publishing are also outliers. The vast majority of people who self-publish are simply never going to have that happen to them, and if it does, it's kind of like lightning in a bottle. It's not something that you can predict. So my advice generally is, if you have a project and you genuinely want to self-publish it, do that. Do it in good faith. Put all of your work into it, and then if it's really successful and traditional publishing comes knocking, that is gravy and good for you. But if you go in with the expectation of, ooh, I really want to be traditionally published, but I'm going to see how it does. Maybe I'll get lucky. You are going to be disappointed, because the odds are really against you that that is going to work out. 99.9999999% of the time, self-publishing is throwing away your opportunity to traditionally publish that specific book. I just want to really reinforce for you that self-publishing is not a trial run. Self-publishing is not something to do half seriously because you want to see how something does. Self-publishing is a serious and legitimate publishing path that you should do research on, put a lot of thought into, and then very strategically self-publish. So you're watching this and maybe you're panicking. Maybe you've self-published something that you thought you could query, or you've been querying and you don't understand why you're being rejected. Well, I'm here to both reassure you with knowledge, but also just kind of offer internet hugs. So if you have self-published something and you thought you could go querying agents with it, get traditionally published with it, I am sorry to tell you that is just probably not going to work out the way that you want it to. Already self-published projects tend to be auto rejects for agents, and you just kind of have to move on to the next project, unfortunately. So what do you do if you've self-published something? That's the first thing. You go, I self-published this, and honestly, my advice is then to put all of your efforts into trying to self-publish it well. If it's already out there, you could do a better cover if you just threw it up and didn't invest in a cover. Put all of your marketing efforts into it, because you might as well try to self-publish well and have that be successful in the self-publishing space. But you have to move on from the idea of it being traditionally published, because odds are you're not going to be an outlier. If something happens there, great. So you need to write a new book, and it cannot be a sequel to the book that you've already self-published, because agents and traditional publishers are not going to be interested in the second book or third book in a series that's already been self-published. Once you self-publish something meant to be a series, like that is the path for that series. Again, 99.9% of the time, unless you were massively, massively successful. So write something new, completely unrelated to the work that you self-published, and you can then query that. Now you can bring up your publishing history when you query that book. So this is why I advise that you put all of the work that you can into the title that you have already self-published, or titles, to make them as successful as you can. Because it can look really, really good to an agent to say, I'm querying you with this book, a book that has not been self-published, and previously I self-published these titles, and you can say anything notable, like maybe you won an award, or you got a positive trade review, or you've sold X number of copies. If you have sold an impressive number of copies, like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, definitely put that in a query. That's going to help you with subsequent works. Otherwise, you can just say that you've published some books under X name. I will say, if that's the case, that you've been self-publishing and then you want to move into traditional publishing, my personal advice, if your self-published works really didn't sell super well and you don't have a established brand in that space that you necessarily need to bring over to traditional publishing, my advice then is to query saying that you would be writing under a new pen name, because that does represent an opportunity for an agent and then a publisher to essentially push you as a debut. You can't be a debut if you change your name. So you kind of have to evaluate your specific situation as a previously self-published author. Now, this is totally separate from situations where you have self-published and you're actually doing really well self-publishing and you're seeking representation, for example, your sub-rights. That's a whole other kettle of fish, because in that case, you are very successful. You're selling tons of copies and you're reaching out to agents to say, hey, look, I'm a really successful self-published author. I'm seeking representation for things like foreign rights and film rights, etc. That is a whole other kettle of fish. But I hope I addressed this situation that, again, sadly, I see far too often, where someone just doesn't know that once they self-publish something, it is more or less over for traditional publishing. So if you are thinking of that, I hope I've stopped you in time. And if you've already done it, I hope I've given you some tools and ideas for how to make the best of it. Let me know down below in the comments if you have any questions or thoughts about this. I am always happy to address specific questions that meet at the intersection of self-publishing and traditional publishing. And give this video a thumbs up if you like it. I will make more videos with publishing advice. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. I post new videos 2 to 3 times a week. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, guys, happy writing.